My blood ran cold as I watched my 9-year-old daughter stare at an empty plate, while her cousin shoveled in his third helping of lasagna. Then my mother-in-law, Addison, cut through the dining room like a knife. My daughter's kids eat first. Her kids can wait for scraps. What happened next would shatter their world in exactly 18 minutes. They thought I was defeated. They thought I'd accept their cruelty and come crawling back like I always did. But what they didn't know was that in those exact 18 minutes, their entire comfortable life, built on my money, was about to come crashing down around them. But to truly understand that moment, you need to know how I became their personal ATM in the first place. How 6 years of generosity, of desperately wanting to belong, turned me into someone they thought they could humiliate without consequence. It all started 2 months before my wedding. Addison called, her voice trembling with what sounded like genuine distress. Property taxes had unexpectedly increased. Could we help just this once? $3,000. She promised to pay it back within months. I was a senior project manager at a pharmaceutical company making good money, and $3,000 wasn't nothing, but it wasn't impossible. I wrote the check that same day. Wyatt was so grateful. He pulled me into a hug, saying his family was lucky to have me, that not everyone would be so generous with people they barely knew. What I didn't tell him was that I wasn't being generous, I was being desperate. My parents had died in a car accident during college, leaving me with a modest inheritance and a crushing loneliness. Wyatt's family seemed like everything I'd lost. His mother baked pies, his father told jokes, his sister's kids called me Aunt Leah within weeks. When Addison hugged me and called me the daughter she'd always wanted, something inside me healed. I thought I'd found my place. My home. I had no idea I just made my first payment into a system that would bleed me dry. 3 months after the wedding, Roger needed a medical procedure. Insurance covered most of it, but not all. $5,000 this time. Addison cried when she asked, explaining how embarrassed Roger felt, how proud he was, how much it meant that family was stepping up. I signed that check even faster than the first. Her gratitude made me feel needed in a way I'd never experienced. That's when I should have noticed the pattern. That's when I should have asked why Roger's adult daughter, Peyton, wasn't contributing. Why his own savings couldn't cover a $5,000 gap. Why every family crisis somehow became my responsibility. But I didn't ask. I wanted to be the good daughter-in-law, the one who understood that family helps family, the one who belonged. My career was taking off. I was a senior project manager at 31, earning nearly 3 times what Wyatt made teaching high school biology. His family noticed that disparity immediately. Addison would subtly touch my arm, praising Wyatt for marrying someone so successful, so capable. I didn't realize she was calculating my worth down to the dollar. The requests escalated with chilling precision. Addison would call within days of me mentioning a promotion, suddenly facing a roof emergency that needed $15,000. Roger's truck would die right after my year-end bonus hit our account, needing immediate replacement. Then came Peyton's crisis. Her divorce from an abusive husband turned ugly, and she needed $12,000 for a custody lawyer. Addison called me sobbing. Family sticks together, she pleaded. We protect our own. Don't you want to help keep those babies safe? I wrote that check, not even discussing it with Wyatt. How could I say no to protecting children? But I didn't ask why Peyton's own parents, who owned their house outright and had retirement savings, couldn't cover their daughter's legal fees. Why every family emergency somehow skipped over the people who should have been first in line and landed directly on me. I was too busy trying to prove I belonged to notice I was being used. 6 years. 6 years of writing checks for emergencies that always coincided with my bonuses. 6 years of funding roof repairs, truck replacements, legal fees, medical bills. 6 years of being told I was generous, selfless. Exactly the kind of daughter-in-law every mother dreamed of. What I failed to track was the complete absence of reciprocity. The one-way street. When Mia was hospitalized with severe pneumonia, and I desperately needed help with Evan, Addison was too busy with her church group. When I suffered a miscarriage and could barely get out of bed, Peyton couldn't take time off her part-time boutique job to bring meals. When Wyatt and I were struggling, needing a weekend away to reconnect, suddenly everyone had scheduling conflicts. But when they needed money, I was family. Sacred. Obligated. Expected to sacrifice without hesitation. Wyatt never questioned it. He'd been raised in a household where his mother's word was law, where Peyton's status as the biological daughter granted her a position I could never achieve. He genuinely believed that financial support equaled love, that writing checks proved our commitment. I wanted so badly to be a good wife, to honor his family, that I ignored the growing unease in my gut. I ignored how they never asked about my work stress or celebrated my achievements. I ignored how they praised Peyton endlessly for her part-time boutique job, while dismissing my 60-hour weeks as just corporate work. I ignored how they displayed dozens of photos of Harper and Liam throughout their house, but not a single picture of Mia and Evan. I ignored everything because I was terrified of being the difficult daughter-in-law, the outsider who didn't understand their ways. So I kept writing checks and pretending everything was fine. I kept showing up for Sunday dinners where I was expected to cook and clean while Peyton scrolled on her phone. I kept volunteering to host holidays, then watched Addison play with Harper and Liam for hours, her bad back miraculously cured. I kept being the ATM. Until that day. Until I walked in and saw my children sitting in front of empty plates while their cousins feasted. Until I heard Addison say my kids could wait for scraps. Until Peyton told my babies they needed to know their place. That's when 6 years of willful blindness shattered. That's when I finally understood what I'd really been funding all this time. Not family connection. Not belonging. Just my children's systematic humiliation at the hands of people who thought my money was more valuable than my kids' dignity. I gathered Mia and Evan and left that house without saying a word. I didn't trust myself to speak. If I started talking, I'd start screaming, and I needed to be cold. Calculated. For what came next. In the car, Evan asked quietly if we were in trouble. Mia stared out the window, tears running down her face that she didn't bother to wipe away. And right there, in that driveway, I made a decision. I was done being the good daughter-in-law. Done writing checks for people who thought my children were disposable. I pulled out my phone. My mind raced, calculating exactly what I needed to do, exactly how long I needed to wait, exactly how I was going to make them understand what they had just lost. 18 minutes. That's how long my children had sat with empty plates. In 18 minutes, I was going to return the favor. The morning had started like any other Tuesday. Client presentations, 17 urgent emails. By 4:30 p.m., I was stuck in a conference room, listening to a researcher explain why we needed to adjust a testing timeline. A cold dread settled in. I wasn't going to make it to pick up Mia and Evan from camp by 5 p.m. I texted Addison from under the table, trying to look like I was taking notes. Running late with work. Any chance you could grab the kids from camp and keep them until 7? So sorry for the short notice. Her response came back in 30 seconds. Of course. Would love to spend extra time with them. Take all the time you need. I should have known. Addison never volunteered for extra time with my children. There was always an excuse. Her back, church, feeling under the weather. The eagerness in those 3 sentences should have triggered every alarm in my system, but I was too relieved to question it. I sent a grateful thank you and turned my attention back to the meeting, already calculating my escape. I didn't escape quickly. By the time I made it to my car, it was 6:45 p.m. I texted Addison again. On my way. She responded with a smiley face emoji and told me dinner was ready. Dinner. She'd made them dinner. That should have been my second warning. I pulled into their driveway at 7:15 p.m. The sun was low, casting long shadows. Before I even turned off the engine, I could hear children's laughter. But it felt off, fractured like 2 separate groups laughing at different things in different rooms. I grabbed my work bag and walked up the path, fishing out the key they'd given me 6 years ago. Addison had made a whole ceremony out of it then, holding it up and announcing I was officially part of the family now. I cried actual tears of gratitude. Now that key felt heavy. The front door opened directly into their living room, but the noise came from the kitchen and dining area. I stepped inside and immediately noticed the rich smell of Italian food. Tomato sauce, garlic, fresh bread. My stomach growled. I'd skipped lunch, and for a fleeting moment, I thought maybe Addison had made enough for me too. That this was one of those rare moments she'd actually been thinking about my needs. I followed the voices, my work heels clicking on their hardwood floors. The hallway opened into a large, combined kitchen and dining space, and that's when I saw it. The scene that would replay in my nightmares with perfect, terrible clarity. Peyton's children sat at the formal mahogany dining table. Harper, 10, her napkin tucked in, worked on her 3rd helping of lasagna. Liam, 8, nearly Mia's age, laughed at something his mother said, reaching for another piece of garlic bread. Their plates were piled high with food. Real plates, the nice floral ones Addison reserved for holidays. Crystal glasses of lemonade, cloth napkins. My children sat on bar stools at the kitchen counter, 15 feet away. Their plates were completely empty. Not even crumbs. Just white ceramic surfaces that might as well have been mirrors, reflecting back their worthlessness. Mia and Evan weren't laughing. They sat perfectly still, hands folded in their laps, watching their cousins eat like you'd watch something on television. Something you weren't part of and never would be. The physical segregation was so deliberate, so stark, my brain couldn't process it. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't poor planning. This was intentional. Addison stood at the dining table, her back to my children, serving Harper another generous portion of lasagna. She was smiling, chatting with Peyton, who sat scrolling on her phone, absently sipping lemonade. Roger occupied his recliner, his own plate balanced on his lap, watching the news. Nobody had noticed me yet. I stood in the doorway watching this domestic scene play out like a nightmare. Oh, Leah, perfect timing. Addison finally glanced up, seeing me. She didn't look embarrassed. Didn't look guilty. She looked mildly pleased, like I'd arrived at a convenient moment. We just finished dinner. Finished. As if my children had participated in a meal, instead of sitting there watching. I couldn't speak. My throat had closed up with a rage so cold it felt like ice spreading through my chest. Instead, I walked over to Mia and Evan, knelt to their eye level, forcing my voice to sound calm. Hey babies, how was your day? Good, Mia said. Her voice had that careful, neutral tone she used when she was trying not to upset anyone. At 9 years old, my daughter had already learned to make herself smaller, to minimize her needs so other people would be comfortable. When had that happened? When had I let that happen? Did you guys have fun playing together? I asked, glancing between my kids and their cousins. Evan shook his head. Thank God for Evan's honesty. He hadn't learned how to lie yet. They played different games, he said quietly. I looked around the room again. The way my children were perched at the edge of everything like visitors. The way Peyton's kids sprawled comfortably, like they owned it. The way nobody at that table seemed to think anything was wrong. What did everyone have for dinner? I asked, though I already knew the answer would destroy me. Grammy made lasagna, Harper announced proudly. It's really good. She makes the best lasagna. I looked at my daughter. And what did you two have? Mia hesitated, glancing toward Addison. That glance told me everything about the power dynamics here, about who my daughter had learned to defer to. We weren't that hungry, she finally said. But I knew Mia. Always hungry after camp. Never turned down her grandmother's cooking. Actually, there wasn't quite enough for everyone. Addison interjected smoothly, like she was explaining something perfectly reasonable. So I made them grilled cheese earlier. They were fine with it. Children don't need full meals every single time they're here. I stood up and walked to the kitchen counter where a large glass lasagna pan sat. At least 6 generous servings remained. Enough to feed my children twice over. Enough to make it clear that Addison's explanation was a lie. And she didn't even care that I could see the evidence. I think I'll make them plates now, I said, reaching for the serving spoon. Leah, honestly, they're fine, Addison said, an edge in her voice. They already ate. But Harper and Liam seem to need full meals, I observed quietly, looking at the overflowing plates at the dining table. They seem to need second and third helpings. The room went silent. Even Roger's chewing slowed. My daughter's children have different nutritional needs, Addison said, and the casualness of her cruelty took my breath away. Her kids can wait for scraps if there's not enough to go around. That's just how it works in blended families. Blended families. As if the problem was family structure instead of deliberate exclusion. As if she was explaining basic mathematics, not teaching my children they didn't deserve to eat. I started serving lasagna onto 2 clean plates anyway, my hands shaking with barely contained fury. Behind me, I heard Peyton's chair scrape. Her footsteps approached. Then her voice. Directed at my children, not at me. You two are sweet kids, she said, smiling. But you should know your place in this family. My children come first. That's just how it is. Mia's fork, which she'd picked up in anticipation of finally eating, stopped halfway to the plate I was preparing. Evan's eyes filled with tears he was too proud to let fall. Roger's voice came from the living room, agreeable and matter-of-fact. Best they learn it young. I looked at my children's faces as they absorbed this lesson. This lesson about their worth, about how their own family saw them as lesser beings who didn't deserve basic dignity or kindness. Something inside me snapped clean in half. Come on, kids, I said quietly. Get your things. We're leaving. Leah, don't be dramatic. Addison called after me, but I was already helping Mia down. We can talk about this. I didn't respond. I just put the plates of lasagna I'd been preparing into the microwave and set it for 2 minutes. My children were going to eat. Properly. Not rushed out the door like I was ashamed of feeding them in this house. Talk about what? I finally said, my voice eerily calm even to my own ears. About how you think my children should accept being second-class family members. About how you think it's appropriate to feed them scraps while their cousins feast. The microwave beeped. I pulled out the plates, tested the temperature, and set them in front of Mia and Evan. Their faces transformed when they saw the food. Real food. The same food their cousins had just been enjoying. That joy shouldn't have broken my heart, but it did. They shouldn't have been this grateful for basic decency. You're twisting everything, Roger said from his recliner, finally setting down his own plate. We love those kids. I looked at him directly for the first time. Do you? When's the last time you came to one of Evan's baseball games? Silence. When's the last time you asked me about her science fair project? She won second place, by the way. Built a model of the solar system that lit up. More silence. When's the last time either of you treated them like they actually belonged here? While my children ate, I pulled up another bar stool and sat beside them. They ate with an intensity that made my chest ache, like they were afraid someone might take it away. 7 and 9 years old, and they'd already learned not to take anything for granted in this house. So what did you guys do all day? I asked gently, keeping my voice light, even as I felt Addison's eyes boring into my back. Watch TV mostly, Evan said between bites. Any good shows? He shrugged. The ones for little kids. Did you play any games? It's such a beautiful day. The question hung in the air. Harper and Liam went to the park with Grammy, Mia answered, her eyes still on her plate. That sounds fun. Did you go too? Silence. The kind that speaks volumes. Why didn't you go to the park, baby? I asked, though I already knew the answer would gut me. Grammy said she could only take 2 kids safely, Mia explained, with a matter-of-factness that shattered something inside me. And Harper and Liam asked first, so they got to go. Asked first. As if my children's grandmother operated on a first-come, first-served basis, instead of treating all her grandchildren equally. As if taking 4 kids to a public park was somehow more dangerous than taking 2. How long were they gone? I asked. I don't know. We watched 3 episodes of cartoons. An hour and a half minimum. My children had sat inside watching toddler cartoons, while their grandmother took their cousins to the park on a perfect summer afternoon. And nobody had thought there was anything wrong with that picture. I looked at Addison, who was suddenly very interested in wiping down the already clean dining table. You couldn't take all 4 kids to the park? It's a safety issue, Leah, she said without looking at me. I can only watch so many children at once. Harper and Liam are more familiar with the park rules. I didn't want to risk. Risk what? I cut her off. Risk my children existing in the same space as their cousins? Risk treating them like they matter. That's not what I said. It's what you meant. Peyton, quiet until now, suddenly set down her phone. Actually, Leah, since you're here, I should mention we're going to be pretty busy the next few weekends. Summer's full of activities. The shift in topic was so abrupt. What kind of activities? Oh, you know, community pool parties, neighborhood barbecues, the annual family reunion on my mom's side. She said it casually, but I caught the deliberate exclusion in her words. That sounds wonderful. The kids would love all of that, especially the pool parties. Mia's been practicing her diving all summer. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Well, Peyton said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes, these are kind of specific events. Not really appropriate for everyone. What does that mean? Roger cleared his throat. What Peyton means is that some of these events are specifically for blood family. Keeps things simple, you understand? Traditions and all that. Blood family. There it was. The phrase that reduced my children to outsiders in their own family tree. I see, I said, though I was only beginning to see the full architecture of their exclusion. And you think it's appropriate to teach my children that they're not real family? That they don't deserve the same experiences as their cousins? We're not saying they're not real family, Addison protested, finally looking at me. We're just being realistic about social dynamics. Your kids need to understand that Peyton's children will always have certain privileges, because they carry our bloodline. It's natural. It's biological. Natural. She was using science words to justify cruelty, as if genetics was a reasonable excuse for treating children differently. So, at the pool party, I said slowly, when Harper and Liam are swimming and playing, where exactly do you expect my children to be? Nobody answered. At the family reunion when everyone's taking photos and sharing stories, do Mia and Evan just stand in the corner? Do they wait outside? You're being deliberately obtuse, Peyton snapped, irritation creeping in. Nobody said they'd be excluded from everything. We're just saying some events are more appropriate for our side of the family. The biological side. I looked around that dining room, truly seeing it for the first time. The portraits on the walls were all of Peyton's children. Not a single photograph of Mia or Evan. Not one. Let me ask you something else, I said, standing up. When's the last time any of you came to Evan's baseball games? He plays every Saturday morning. For 2 seasons. Silence. When's the last time you asked Mia about school? About her friends? About the science fair she spent 6 weeks preparing for? Roger shifted uncomfortably. We ask about school. When? When's the last time you called just to talk to them? Not to ask me for money. The question landed like a physical blow. I could see it in their faces, the realization that I'd connected the dots they thought I was too blind to see. That's not fair, Addison said weakly. Isn't it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like your relationship with my children has always been secondary to your relationship with my bank account. You remember to call when Roger needed a new truck. You remember to call when Peyton needed a lawyer. You remember to call when the roof needed repairs. But you've never once remembered to call on Mia's birthday. Not once in 9 years. We send cards. Peyton protested. You send cards that I know for a fact your mother buys in bulk at the grocery store, because I found the receipt last Christmas. Generic birthday cards with $20 tucked inside. The same cards you send to your hairdresser and your mail carrier. Mia had stopped eating. Both my children stared at their plates, absorbing this conversation about their worth, learning in real time how little they meant to the people who were supposed to love them unconditionally. Come on, kids, I said quietly. Get your things. We're leaving. Leah, please, Addison started stepping toward me. Let's not do this in front of the children. You should have thought about that before you did it in front of the children, I said. Before you made them watch their cousins eat while they went hungry. Before you taught them they're not worth the same effort, the same love, the same basic decency as Harper and Liam. I helped Mia and Evan gather their things, my mind racing ahead to what had to come next. At the door I turned back one last time. We'll talk again soon. When you're ready to be honest about whether you actually love my children, or just my money. The flash of panic across Addison's face told me everything. For the first time in 6 years, she was realizing her cash flow might be in jeopardy. The ATM might finally be closing. I walked my children to the car, buckled them in, and sat in the driver's seat without starting the engine. My hands were shaking. My whole body was shaking. In the rearview mirror I could see both kids staring out their windows, faces carefully blank in that way children learn when they're trying not to cry. And that's when I knew exactly what I had to do. I turned the key in the ignition but didn't put the car in drive. The silence in the car was heavy, oppressive. I should have said something comforting, but my throat had closed. Finally, I put the car in reverse and backed out of the driveway. The house sat there in my rearview mirror, warm light glowing from the windows, looking exactly like the kind of home where families gathered and children were loved. The illusion was perfect from the outside. We made it 3 blocks before Mia spoke. Mom. Her voice was so small. Why don't Grammy and Pop like us as much as Harper and Liam? The question landed in my chest like a stone dropping into still water. I opened my mouth to give her the comforting lie, but I couldn't. I couldn't lie to her anymore. They should love you exactly the same, baby, I said instead, my voice shaking. Grandparents are supposed to love all their grandchildren equally. But they don't, Evan said, flat and factual, as only a 7-year-old can be. We're not blood family, Aunt Peyton said. I had to pull over. I couldn't see the road anymore through the tears. I guided the car to the curb in front of a darkened park and put it in park, pressing my palms against my eyes. My 7-year-old son had just articulated his own perceived worthlessness. And he'd done it in the same tone he might use to comment on the weather, like it was just a fact of life he'd accepted. Listen to me, I said, turning around in my seat. What Aunt Peyton said is cruel and wrong. You are family. You are their grandchildren. And if they can't see how special and valuable and wonderful you are, that's their failure, not yours. Do you understand me? Mia nodded, but her eyes were full of doubt. Evan just stared at his hands. How long has this been happening? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. How long have they been treating you differently when I'm not there? The kids exchanged a glance. Always, I think, Mia finally said. But we thought maybe we were being too sensitive. Like maybe we were imagining it. Always. The word echoed in my head. Always meant this wasn't new. Always meant every time I dropped them off, every Sunday dinner, every holiday gathering, this had been happening. And I'd been too blind to see it. Or maybe I'd been too afraid to see it, because seeing it would have meant choosing between my children and the family I'd worked so hard to belong to. My mind started racing backward through 6 years of memories, re-examining them through this new lens. Mia's 6th birthday when Addison and Roger brought Harper and Liam elaborate presents, while Mia got a $20 Target gift card. I told myself they were on a budget, that handmade gifts were more meaningful. Christmas 2 years ago, when Addison's living room was covered in framed photos of Harper and Liam. When I'd asked where Mia and Evan's photos were, Addison said she was waiting to get good ones printed. I believed her. The beach house vacation we weren't invited to because of limited space, even though it had 4 bedrooms. Every small cruelty had been there all along, building a foundation of exclusion brick by brick. I'd been too busy writing checks to notice the structure they were constructing around my children. I pulled back onto the road, still cataloging incidents I dismissed as misunderstandings. The Christmas pageant where they cheered for Harper but got the time wrong for Evan's performance. The science fair they promised to come to but never showed. The baseball games, the school concerts, the award ceremonies. All the moments my children had scanned the audience looking for their grandparents and found empty seats instead. When we pulled into our driveway, I could see Wyatt in the kitchen. Normal Tuesday evening. Making dinner, probably assuming we'd all walk in with stories and everything would be fine. Everything was not fine. The kids went straight upstairs. I knew they needed space. I stood in the entryway for a moment, trying to compose myself before facing my husband. My face must have given me away immediately. What happened? Wyatt asked, already defensive. I told him everything. Every word his mother had said, every cruelty his sister had inflicted, every moment of our children sitting with empty plates. I watched his face cycle through shock, discomfort, then something that looked like resignation. And that expression told me he'd known. Maybe not the specific incidents but the overall pattern. He'd known and chosen not to see it. They probably didn't mean it the way it sounded, he said. Those words felt like betrayal. You know how Mom is. She says things without thinking. She told our children they should wait for scraps, Wyatt. She said it was normal for blood family to eat first. Your sister told them they need to know their place. What part of that could I possibly be misunderstanding? He ran his hand through his hair. I'm sure there's context you're missing. Family dynamics are complicated. Stop, I said, my voice sharp enough that he actually took a step back. Stop defending them. Stop making excuses. Your family humiliated our children today. And instead of being angry about it, you're telling me I'm overreacting. I'm not saying you're overreacting. I'm saying maybe we should talk to them before jumping to conclusions. I heard what they said, Wyatt. I saw what they did. There are no conclusions to jump to. This happened. He was quiet, struggling with some internal battle. They've always been good to us, he finally said, the weakness in that argument making me want to scream. Have they? When Mia was in the hospital, where was your mother? When I had a miscarriage, did your sister bring over a single meal? When we begged them to babysit so we could save our marriage, did any of them make time? That's different. How? How is it different? They had commitments. They have lives. But we can drop everything when they need money, I said quietly. We can drop everything when your mother needs a new roof, or your father needs a new truck, or your sister needs a lawyer. Funny how that works. I walked past him to the home office and opened my laptop, pulling up our bank account with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Wyatt followed me, hovering in the doorway. What are you doing? Something I should have done years ago, I said. I'm calculating exactly how much money we've given your family. Leah, that's not necessary. It's absolutely necessary. I need to know. I need to see the number. I need to understand what I've been funding all this time, while they've been systematically excluding our children from their own family. The spreadsheet started coming together. Each transaction a small wound that added up to something catastrophic. $3,000 here, $5,000 there, $15,000 for the roof, $12,000 for legal fees, $8,000 for medical bills. The numbers climbed higher and higher while Wyatt stood in the doorway, his face growing paler with each entry. When I finally reached the total, I stared at it, not quite believing what I was seeing. $134,000. Over 6 years. I had given Wyatt's family $134,000. And in return, they taught my children they weren't worth feeding. $134,000, I said out loud, my voice hollow. The number sat on my screen in bold digital certainty, impossible to deny. Wyatt made a sound like he'd been punched. That can't be right. It's right. I've checked it 3 times. I scrolled back to the top, showing him the earliest entries. This is every bank transfer, every check, every direct payment I've made to your family or on their behalf. Want me to walk you through it? He didn't answer, just stared at the screen. $3,000 for property taxes before we were even married, I continued, my voice mechanical. $5,000 for your dad's medical procedure 3 months after the wedding. $12,000 for Peyton's custody lawyer. $15,000 for the roof. $8,000 for your mom's dental work. $22,000 for your dad's truck. I didn't realize, Wyatt said weakly. I didn't know it added up to that much. That's the problem, Wyatt. You never asked. You never questioned why every single family emergency became my financial responsibility. You never wondered why your parents with their paid-off house, and your sister with her boutique job, couldn't handle their own expenses without my constant support. I kept scrolling. Emergency dental work. Property tax increases with suspicious regularity. Car repairs coinciding with my quarterly bonuses. Medical bills. Home repairs. Utility assistance during tight months that never seemed to end. Some of these were loans, Wyatt said, grasping at the weakest defense. They were going to pay us back. Were they? Show me one. Show me a single loan that's been repaid. Silence. The roof repair was supposed to be temporary help. He tried again. Dad was going to pay us back when his settlement came through. What settlement, Wyatt? There was no settlement. There was never going to be a settlement. That was just another story to make me feel better about writing the check. He sank into the chair across from my desk, head in his hands. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. But then I remembered Mia and Evan, sitting on those bar stools with empty plates, and the sympathy evaporated. They're my parents, he said finally, his voice muffled. They raised me. They sacrificed for me. I can't just abandon them. I'm not asking you to abandon them. I'm asking you to see what they've been doing to our children. To us. They've been using you, Wyatt. Using your guilt and your sense of obligation to bleed us dry, while treating our kids like they're less than human. That's not fair. Your mother told our children they should wait for scraps. I cut him off, my voice rising. Your sister told them they need to know their place. Your father agreed that they should learn young to expect less. While we've been paying for their mortgages and their trucks and their lawyers, they've been teaching our babies that they don't deserve basic dignity. How is pointing that out not fair? I heard footsteps on the stairs and immediately lowered my voice. Mom. Mia's voice, small and uncertain. Can I get some water? Of course, baby. I'll come with you. I left Wyatt sitting in the office staring at the spreadsheet. Mia filled her water bottle at the kitchen sink, taking longer than necessary. She'd come down because she'd heard us arguing and wanted to make sure I was okay. 9 years old and already trying to take care of me. Are you and Dad fighting about what happened at Grammy's? She asked, not looking at me. I could have lied. Should have probably. But I was so tired of lying. We're having a difficult conversation about it, yes? Is it our fault? The question shattered what was left of my composure. I pulled her into a hug, holding her tight. No, sweetheart. None of this is your fault. Not one single bit. You and Evan have done nothing wrong. The adults in the situation have made bad choices, and we're trying to figure out how to fix it. Does Dad think we're overreacting too? Like she'd already internalized that her feelings about being excluded weren't valid. Dad is learning some things he should have paid attention to a long time ago, I said carefully. It's hard for him because it's his family, and nobody wants to believe their family would do something hurtful on purpose. She nodded against my shoulder. After I got her settled back in bed, I stood in the hallway for a long moment, just breathing, trying to find the strength to go back downstairs. My phone buzzed. A text from Rachel, my best friend. How did it go? Call me if you need to talk. I texted her on the drive home a brief message. Now I realized I desperately needed to hear a voice that wasn't Wyatt's. Someone who would understand without defending. I went into the bedroom and closed the door before calling her. Tell me everything, Rachel said immediately, no preamble. So I did. I told her about the empty plates, Addison's casual cruelty, Peyton's deliberate meanness, Roger nodding along. I told her about Wyatt's defensive reaction, and the spreadsheet showing $134,000 given to people who couldn't be bothered to love my children. Rachel listened without interrupting. She didn't try to fix it or minimize it. She just listened until I ran out of words. I'm not surprised, she finally said, sadness in her voice. Leah, I've been watching this pattern for years. I tried to point it out gently, but you weren't ready to hear it. I know. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. I understand why you couldn't see it. You wanted family so badly after losing your parents. Wyatt's family seemed like everything you've been missing, but they've been using that longing against you. Using your generosity as a weapon. What do? I asked, my voice breaking. How do I fix this? What do you want to do? I thought about it. Really considered what outcome I was looking for. An apology. For them to change. To salvage the relationship. What I wanted was for them to understand what they'd lost. What they'd thrown away. I want them to hurt the way they hurt my kids, I said quietly. Is that terrible? It's human, Rachel said. And honestly, it might be necessary. Some people don't learn until they face real consequences. I don't even know where to start. Actually, Rachel said, and I could hear the shift in her tone from friend to paralegal. You might have more options than you think. Didn't you co-sign on their mortgage? Yeah, 3 years ago when they were refinancing. Their credit was shot. And you've been making payments. Substantial ones. The property taxes alone are brutal. What about Roger's truck? You mentioned a loan. I guaranteed it with my credit score. They couldn't get approved on their own. Rachel was quiet for a moment. Leah, do you understand what this means? You're not just giving them money. You're actually legally responsible for their debts, which means you also have the power to remove yourself from those obligations. My heart started beating faster. What are you saying? I'm saying that if you wanted to send a message, a very clear and very powerful message about what happens when you take someone for granted, you have the legal right to stop all support immediately. You can remove yourself as a co-signer on that mortgage. You can withdraw your guarantee on the truck loan. You can stop making any payments you've been making on their behalf. What would happen to them? They'd have to cover those expenses themselves. And given what you've told me, they probably can't. They'd face foreclosure on the house. The truck would get repossessed. They'd have to drastically downsize their lifestyle. I sat with that information, turning it over. The power I'd had all along without realizing it. The leverage I'd been giving them freely while they used it to hurt my children. How fast could this happen? I asked. If you make the calls tomorrow, the banks would notify them within 48 hours. Foreclosure proceedings take about 90 days, but the panic would start immediately. I thought about 18 minutes. The humiliation. The hunger. The learning they didn't matter. I need to think about this, I said. Of course. But Leah, whatever you decide, I'm here. If you need legal paperwork, if you need someone to make calls with you, if you just need someone to remind you that you're not crazy for being angry, I'm here. After we hung up, I sat on the edge of my bed. Downstairs I could hear Wyatt, probably still in the office, looking at that spreadsheet. The house was quiet. I pulled up my banking app and looked at the recurring payments. The mortgage assistance on the 1st of every month. The truck payment on the 15th. The mysterious monthly transfer I'd set up years ago that was now, I realized, paying part of Peyton's rent. They built their entire comfortable lifestyle on the foundation of my income. Their nice house, their reliable vehicles, their ability to take beach vacations and host elaborate dinners. All of it funded by the daughter-in-law they'd never bothered to value. I stayed up most of that night researching cosign loans, guarantor obligations, mortgage law. By 3 a.m. I understood exactly what I could do and what the consequences would be. By 4 a.m. I'd made my decision. I didn't sleep. By the time dawn broke, I knew exactly what I was going to do. Wyatt left early for summer school classes, kissing my forehead without meeting my eyes. We hadn't resolved anything. The spreadsheet still sat open on my laptop downstairs. $134,000 in damning evidence neither of us could ignore. I got the kids ready for camp with mechanical efficiency, packing lunches, while they moved around me with unusual quietness. They knew something was wrong. Mom, Mia asked as I buckled her seatbelt. Are we ever going to see Grammy and Pop-Pop again? The question lodged in my throat. I don't know yet, sweetheart. We need some time to figure things out. Did we do something wrong? Her voice cracked. I gripped the car door. No, you did nothing wrong. Nothing. Do you hear me? She nodded, but I could see the doubt. Children always blame themselves. I made it 3 blocks before I had to pull over. The tears came so suddenly. I gripped the steering wheel and tried to breathe through the sobs. I'm sorry, I managed to say. I'm so sorry you had to experience what happened yesterday. You deserved better. So much better. It's okay, Mom, Evan said quietly from the back seat. We're used to it. Used to it. My 7-year-old son was used to being treated as less than human by his own family. How had I let this happen? How had I been so blind? Are we going to be okay? Evan asked, and something in his tone made me look at him. Without Graham's help, are we going to be okay? The question revealed how much he'd absorbed about our family dynamics. The constant requests for money. The unspoken understanding that Grammy and Pop-Pop required our support to survive. We're going to be more than okay, I told him, wiping my eyes and pulling back onto the road. I promise you that. After I dropped them at camp, I sat in the parking lot with my phone in my hand. My accountant's number was already pulled up. All I had to do was press call. But once I started this, there was no going back. Once I dismantled their financial security, we would be at war. I pressed call. My accountant, Margaret, answered on the second ring. I'd prepared her yesterday. I want to move forward, I said. With everything we discussed. You're sure about this, Leah? Once we start, it'll move quickly. I'm sure. Okay, let me pull up your file. The mortgage first. You're listed as cosigner on the property at 847 Maple Grove Drive, correct? Correct. I'll contact the bank this morning and initiate removal. They'll need to refinance without your income and credit, which, given what you've told me, they likely can't do. They'll have 90 days to either refinance, find another cosigner, or pay off the mortgage in full. If not, foreclosure begins. How quickly will they be notified? The bank will contact them within 24 to 48 hours. Next, I called my lawyer, Patricia. She'd already reviewed the documentation regarding the truck loan and Peyton's rental situation. The truck loan is straightforward, Patricia explained. You guaranteed it with your credit, but you can withdraw that guarantee with written notice. The dealership will contact Roger and require him to refinance without your backing within 30 days. Or they'll repossess the vehicle. Peyton's rent? Even simpler. You've been making supplemental payments directly to her landlord. You can stop those immediately. No legal process required. Just stop paying. Will the landlord notify her when her next rent payment is short? Absolutely. Probably within the week. I sat in my car after those calls, watching other parents drop their children off. Normal people living normal lives. Not calculating revenge against family members. But I wasn't going to feel guilty. Not this time. I drove home and worked from my home office, my mind somewhere else entirely. I kept checking the time obsessively. I was going to time this perfectly. 18 minutes. That's how long Mia and Evan had sat with empty plates. 18 minutes of hunger, humiliation, and learning they didn't matter. At 7:02 p.m. that evening, I made the first call. The mortgage bank had already processed my paperwork. All I had to do was verbally confirm my intention. It became official. The representative was professional as she explained the primary borrowers would be notified within 24 hours. Second call. The truck dealership. Same process, same efficiency. Roger would be notified. Third call. Peyton's landlord, Frank. I've been sending him checks for 2 years. I'm calling to inform you that I'll no longer be making supplemental rent payments for Unit 3B. This is effective immediately. The tenant is going to be short on rent then, Frank said, sounding annoyed. She can't afford the full amount. That's between you and her. My obligation ends today. I hung up and looked at the clock. 7:04 p.m. 3 phone calls in 2 minutes. Everything was done. Now I waited. Wyatt came home around 7:30 p.m., still walking on eggshells around me. He heated up leftovers and ate in silence while I sat at the kitchen table, my phone face down. Did you do something? He asked quietly. I protected our children. Leah, what did you do? Before I could answer, my phone rang. Addison. I checked the time. 7:22 p.m. Exactly 18 minutes after I'd made my calls. I answered on speaker so Wyatt could hear. Leah, honey. Something's wrong with the mortgage payment. Her voice was trembling, verging on panic. The bank called and said you removed yourself as cosigner. That can't be right. There must be some mistake. There's no mistake, Addison. I removed myself from your mortgage and stopped all payments. You can't do that. We'll lose the house. Then I suggest you figure out how to make the payments yourselves. You have 90 days before foreclosure proceedings begin. Leah, please. We can work this out. Can we? Because yesterday you told my children they should wait for scraps while your daughter's children ate first. You told them to know their place. So now you're going to learn yours. I ended the call. Wyatt stared at me, his face pale. What did you just do? I took away everything I've been giving them. The mortgage, the truck loan, Peyton's rent. All of it stops today. They're going to lose everything. Good. My phone rang again. Roger. This time I let it go to voicemail and moments later, heard his angry voice leaving a message about how I was destroying the family, how I had no right, how he was going to make me fix this. 12 minutes after the first call, my phone rang a third time. Peyton. Sobbing before I even said hello. You told Frank to stop paying my rent. Leah, I can't afford my apartment without that help. I'm going to get evicted. Then I suggest you ask your mother for help, I said calmly. Oh wait. She's about to lose her house because I stopped subsidizing her lifestyle too. You vindictive? Be very careful what you say next, Peyton, because I've also notified your custody lawyer that I won't be covering any more of your legal fees. I believe you still owe them about $8,000. I'm sure they'll be very interested in immediate payment. The line went dead. 17 minutes after the first call. I looked at Wyatt, who was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. I timed it, I said. 18 minutes. The exact amount of time our children sat with empty plates. Every phone call, every moment of panic they're experiencing right now, it matches what they did to Mia and Evan. Minute by minute. Leah. They're going to lose everything they have. Yes, I said. They are. Wyatt's phone started ringing at 6 a.m. the next morning. His mother. He looked at the screen, looked at me and declined the call. It rang again 30 seconds later and again and again. By the time we sat down for breakfast, he had 14 missed calls from various family members. I had 9. The barrage had begun. The first voicemail from Addison started with tears. Leah, honey, please call me back. There's been a terrible misunderstanding with the bank. They're saying we're going to lose the house. Please, we need to fix this. Call me. The second voicemail an hour later had a different tone. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but this isn't funny. You can't just destroy our lives because you're upset about a little disagreement. We're family. Call me back right now. The third voicemail was pure rage. How dare you do this to us after everything we've done for you? We welcomed you into this family with open arms. We treated you like a daughter, and this is how you repay us? By taking away our home? You're a spiteful, vindictive woman, and Wyatt deserves better. I listened to each one with Wyatt across the table, watching my face. I kept my expression neutral, clinical, like I was reviewing data from a work project. She's spiraling, I said calmly. Leah, maybe we should. Should what? Give them another chance to tell our children they're not good enough? Write another check so they can continue treating us like an ATM with a pulse. He didn't have an answer. By mid-morning, Roger had sent 6 text messages, each escalating in aggression. The last one threatened legal action, claiming I'd entered into a binding agreement and couldn't just walk away. That's when I forwarded the entire thread to Patricia, my lawyer. She called me back within 20 minutes. Your father-in-law is bluffing, she said. There's no binding agreement. Every payment you made was voluntary. I'm sending him a cease and desist letter right now, explaining that any further harassment will result in a restraining order. Thank you. Leah, be prepared. This is going to get worse before it gets better. People who've been financially dependent don't give up easily. They're going to try everything to get you to resume payments. She was right. On day 2, Peyton showed up at my office building. I was in a meeting when my assistant knocked, apologetic. I'm so sorry, but there's a woman in the lobby demanding to see you. Security is dealing with it, but she's claiming it's a family emergency. I knew immediately who it was. Peyton stood near the security desk, her face blotchy from crying, her voice loud enough to draw attention. You can't do this to me, she was saying. My children are going to be homeless because of her. Ma'am, you need to leave the building, the guard said firmly. Not until she talks to me. I approached slowly, keeping my distance. Peyton. She whirled around. I saw genuine panic in her eyes. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Leah, please. Frank is going to evict me. I can't afford the full rent. Harper and Liam need stability. You can't do this to my children. You did this to your children when you decided mine weren't worth basic decency, I said quietly, aware of the audience. That's not what happened. You told my kids they should know their place. You said your children come first. Well, now my children come first. You'll figure it out, Peyton. The same way millions of single mothers figure it out without someone else paying their bills. I'll lose custody. Don't you understand? If I can't provide stable housing, Jeremy's lawyer will use it against me. You're going to help him take my children. That hit differently. For a split second I wavered, thinking about Harper and Liam, how none of this was their fault. But then I remembered Mia and Evan on those bar stools with empty plates, and the sympathy evaporated. Then maybe you should have thought about consequences before you treated my children like they were disposable. Security escorted her out while she screamed that I was destroying her life. I went back upstairs, sat through the rest of my meeting, and didn't let myself think about it until I got home. What I didn't expect was the call from Wyatt's Aunt Linda. I'd met Linda 3 times. She lived in Oregon and wasn't particularly close to Addison or Roger, but she was Roger's sister. Leah, this is Linda. I hope you don't mind me calling, but I need to understand what's happening. What did they tell you? I asked carefully. Addison called me yesterday asking for money. She said you'd cut them off and they were about to lose everything. She said you'd always been controlling with money, that you held it over their heads, and now you were punishing them over some minor disagreement about the grandkids. The lies were so breathtaking I actually laughed. Is that what she said? She made it sound like you'd been financially abusive for years. Said she'd been reaching out to family because she didn't know how else to survive. She's been telling me this for about 3 years now. Actually, I've been sending them $1,500 a month because I thought they were being mistreated. 3 years. Addison had been running a side operation, telling extended family I was the villain while I actively funded her life. Linda, would you be willing to listen to my side of this? That's why I'm calling. I sent her everything. The spreadsheet, bank statements proving I'd been making their mortgage payments, the timeline showing how every request coincided with my bonuses. And then I sent her the recording I'd made on my phone at dinner, where you could clearly hear Addison talking about my children waiting for scraps. Linda called me back an hour later, anger in her voice. I've been sending them $1,500 a month for 3 years based on complete lies. She told me you were withholding money while living extravagantly. She made you sound like a monster. I'm sorry she put you in that position. Don't apologize. I'm furious with her, not you. I just called Roger and told him exactly what I think of him and his wife. I won't be sending another dollar. Over the next few days I got similar calls from Wyatt's Uncle Marcus, 2 cousins I'd barely met, and even Addison's own sister. Each had been told some version of the same story. I was wealthy and controlling, refusing to help while Wyatt's parents struggled. The web of lies was more extensive than I'd imagined, and watching it unravel gave me a cold satisfaction I wasn't entirely proud of, but couldn't deny. Wyatt was caught in the middle. His phone never stopped ringing. His mother called sobbing. His father left voicemails calling me names I won't repeat. His sister sent him essays about how I was vindictive and cruel. I watched him struggle, torn between the loyalty he'd been raised to feel and the growing realization that I'd been right. One night, about a week after I'd made those phone calls, I heard him talking to his mother in the bedroom. His voice was strained, exhausted. Mom, I can't keep having this conversation. No, I'm not going to make her change her mind because you told her children they should wait for scraps. You told them they needed to know their place. There was a long pause. I don't care if that's not how you meant it, Wyatt continued, and I heard something crack in his voice. That's what you said. That's what Mia and Evan heard. Do you have any idea what that did to them? I backed away from the door. I'd heard enough. Something was shifting in him finally. When he came downstairs 20 minutes later, his eyes were red. I told her I need space, he said. I can't be in the middle of this anymore. I can't keep defending them when I know what they did was wrong. It was the first time he'd acknowledged their behavior without making excuses. That must have been hard, I said. It was. But you know what was harder? Mia asked me earlier if Grammy was mad because we stopped giving her money. My heart dropped. She what? She heard me on the phone. She connected all the dots. Leah. She understands that Grammy and Pop-Pop's love was conditional on our financial support. What 9-year-old should have to understand that? He sat down, head in his hands. I've been so stupid. You tried to tell me for years that something was off and I kept defending them. I kept telling you that you were misunderstanding, that you were being too sensitive. And all this time, our kids were watching and learning that love is something you have to purchase. You didn't see it because you didn't want to, I said gently. They're your parents. Nobody wants to believe their family would treat them that way. But they did. They used us. They used you specifically because you lost your parents and were desperate for family. They saw that vulnerability and exploited it for 6 years. And I let them. The admission hung between us, painful and necessary. What do we do now? He asked. I sat down across from him. Now we protect our children. We teach them that they don't have to accept less than they deserve from anyone, including family members who are supposed to love them unconditionally. He nodded slowly. Even if it means my parents lose their house. Especially if it means that. Because maybe losing everything they built on our backs will teach them something about consequences and respect. For the first time since this nightmare started, Wyatt reached across the table and took my hand. I'm sorry, he said. I should have protected you and the kids years ago. I should have seen what they were doing. You see it now, I said. That's what matters. We sat at that kitchen table holding hands, not saying anything, just existing in the quiet acknowledgement that we were finally on the same side. It was the first moment of peace I'd felt since walking into that dining room and seeing my children with empty plates. The next 3 months unfolded exactly as my lawyer and accountant had predicted. Addison and Roger couldn't refinance the mortgage without my income and credit score. Their bank account couldn't sustain the monthly payments. Foreclosure began right on schedule. Clinical and impersonal. Just business. I heard about it through Wyatt, who still received updates from his mother, though he'd stopped taking her calls daily. They found a small 2-bedroom apartment above a laundromat, in a neighborhood they'd once described as not their kind of area. They had to sell most of their furniture to cover moving costs and first month's rent. Roger's truck was repossessed in week 7. I heard he tried to hide it, but the repo company had tracking technology. Now he took the bus to his part-time job, something he complained about bitterly to anyone who would listen. Peyton found a roommate, a college student needing cheap rent. She picked up a second job waiting tables 3 nights a week. Her Instagram, which I occasionally checked out of morbid curiosity, went from curated lifestyle shots to nothing at all. I waited for the satisfaction to come, the vindictive pleasure I'd imagined I'd feel watching their comfortable lifestyle collapse. But it never arrived. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction. Not guilt. Not regret. Just a vast emptiness where my relationship with Wyatt's family used to exist. What I didn't expect was the letter. It arrived on a Tuesday afternoon for months after I'd made those phone calls. Handwritten address, no return label. But I recognized Addison's careful cursive. I held it for a long time, not sure I wanted to read whatever justification or accusation it contained. The letter was 3 pages long, written on simple lined paper, not the expensive stationery she used to use. Dear Leah, it began. No sweetheart, no honey, just my name. I've started this letter 17 times. Each time I wrote something, then crumpled it up because it wasn't honest enough, or it was making excuses, or it was trying to minimize what we did. I'm going to try one more time to just tell you the truth. You were right about all of it. We treated your children poorly. We prioritized Peyton's kids over Mia and Evan in ways that were cruel and deliberate. We made them feel less than. And we did it consciously, telling ourselves we had good reasons but knowing deep down that we didn't. I told myself it was about blood, about biology, about maintaining family traditions. But the truth is simpler and uglier than that. I was jealous of you. You had the education I never got, the career I never pursued, the financial independence I never achieved. You represented everything I'd given up or never had the courage to chase. And instead of being proud of my son for finding someone so accomplished, I resented you for it. Peyton was my do-over, my second chance. I poured everything into her kids that I felt I'd missed with my own children. And when you came along with your success and your money and your confidence, I saw you as competition instead of family. So I took your money, and I let you believe it made you belong. But I never really let you in. I never really accepted that your children were as much my grandchildren as Peyton's. I kept you at arm's length while bleeding you dry. And I told myself I was doing it for family when really I was just being spiteful and small. Losing the house, losing our comfortable life, it forced me to look at what we'd done. Roger and I are living in a 2-bedroom apartment that costs more per month than our mortgage did, and we're barely making it. Peyton is working herself to exhaustion just to keep her kids housed. And we did this to ourselves, not you. I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for anything except the chance, maybe someday, to be a real grandmother to Mia and Evan. To show them that adults can learn and change and do better. To prove that I'm capable of loving them the way I should have from the beginning. If you're not ready for that, I understand. If you're never ready for that, I understand that too. I just needed you to know that I see what we did. I see it clearly now, and I'm sorry. It was signed simply Addison. No love or regards. I read it 3 times before showing it to Wyatt that night. He read it once slowly, then set it down. What do you think? He asked. I think it's the first honest thing she said to me in 6 years, I answered. But I don't know if one letter changes anything. Do you want it to? That was the real question. Did I want to rebuild a relationship with people who'd hurt my children so deliberately? Did I want to risk letting them back into our lives? I don't know yet, I admitted. Ask me again in a few months. Wyatt and I had started marriage counseling in month 2, after a particularly bad fight where he'd accused me of being vindictive and I'd accused him of being a coward. Our therapist, Dr. Chin, had a gift for cutting through defenses. She'd helped Wyatt understand how deeply his mother had conditioned him to prioritize her emotional needs over everyone else's, including his own children's. She'd walked him through the manipulation, showing him how Addison had trained him from childhood to believe that a good son never questioned his mother, never set boundaries, never chose his own family over hers. It was painful to watch him grapple with that realization. In some ways, Wyatt was grieving the mother he thought he had. For my part, Dr. Chin helped me see how losing my parents had made me vulnerable to Addison's manipulation. How my desperate need for family connection had blinded me to warning signs. She didn't let me off the hook for ignoring my instincts, but she helped me understand why I'd done it. The counseling wasn't magic. We still fought. But slowly, incrementally, we were building something stronger. Wyatt started setting boundaries with his family in ways he never had before. When his mother tried to complain about their apartment, he told her he couldn't listen and ended the call. When Peyton sent him long texts blaming me, he responded with a single sentence. You're responsible for your own choices. When Roger tried to guilt him about abandoning family, Wyatt finally told him that family works both ways, and he was done being the only one expected to sacrifice. It was remarkable watching him find his spine after 34 years of conditioning. Painful but remarkable. The biggest changes, though, came in our children. Mia stopped apologizing for everything. I hadn't even realized how often she apologized until she stopped. Sorry for asking for seconds. Sorry for needing help with homework. Sorry for existing. All of it gradually faded away as she realized she didn't have to earn her place in her own family. Evan started talking about his feelings. When something upset him, he said so. When he was angry or hurt, he told us instead of going quiet and small. He started taking up space again. Started being loud and messy and exactly as present as a 7-year-old boy should be. They stopped asking about Grammy and Pop-Pop around month 3. Just stopped mentioning them entirely, like they collectively decided that chapter was closed. When I eventually showed them Addison's letter in month 5, asking if they'd want to see their grandparents again someday, Mia thought about it for a long time. Maybe when I'm older, she finally said. Right now I don't think I'm ready. Is that okay? That's more than okay, baby. You get to decide when and if you're ready. Nobody else. What about you, Evan? Wyatt asked. Evan shrugged. I don't know. I don't really miss them. Is that bad? Not even a little bit, I assured him. 6 months after everything fell apart, we had dinner together as a family. Just the 4 of us. No extended family obligations, no performances for people who didn't really value us. Just us existing together in our own space. Wyatt made pasta. The kids set the table. I lit candles just because it felt right. We ate and talked and laughed. And somewhere in the middle of Evan telling a ridiculous story about camp, I looked around our table and realized this was what family was supposed to feel like. Safe, equal, unconditional. I'd spent 6 years trying to buy my way into belonging with people who would never really let me in. I'd funded a comfortable lifestyle for people who treated my children as disposable. I'd written checks and ignored red flags and convinced myself that love just looked different in different families. But I'd been wrong. Love doesn't look like empty plates and casual cruelty. Love doesn't come with conditions and hierarchies and payment plans. Real love looks like this. Like pasta dinner on a Tuesday night, with sauce on the tablecloth and kids talking over each other, and nobody keeping score of who deserves what. I'd burned down the toxic structure I'd been supporting for years. And from the ashes we were building something real. The screams that had filled Addison's house the night I made those phone calls had been the sound of consequences arriving after years of being held at bay. I delivered them with precision and purpose, timing the devastation to match the cruelty my children had experienced. I'd never regret it, not for a single moment, because my children deserved a mother who would protect them, even when it meant going to war with the family I tried so hard to join. They deserved to learn that they didn't have to accept less than they were worth, that boundaries were healthy, that real love never required them to make themselves smaller. And if teaching them that meant dismantling someone else's comfortable life, then that was a price I'd pay every single time. This story of justice and boundaries was a journey, and I want to hear your thoughts. What would you have done in my place? Have you ever had to cut ties with family who took advantage? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one.